Yes, in the way back.
Two questions. Those costs, how many years would it take to actually pay it back?
How many years would it take me to pay back my cost? I have not added in the federal credits, the rebate, or the state credits yet, but I like to look at things absolutely in the worst possible case, and if I got no reimbursement at all, I figured out this cost would be, I think it was 27 years.
And you said it was
But that's-
5,000 total? I couldn't see the numbers.
Oh, you want me to go back for a second?
Just the total. You said
The total, my out-of-pocket was $23,000. To me, I equated that with the equivalent of a nice new car or the equivalent of a kitchen remodel, which is the one thing you can do to your house to make it, make yourself a little money back, or maybe putting in a pool. And to me, I got more value out of doing this, which would be a long-term future thing. I thought it would help future property owners too. So I really didn't make my decision that much based on cost. Also, being one of the first ones in my town, I wanted to sort of show my town that it wasn't going to really be a bad thing to have to look at this. When I went through mine is when that Clifton Park homeowners had put up their 80-foot long solar shed, and Clifton Park was getting all upset about having to look at that. I just didn't want that to be the only experience my town people heard about.
the other question was, how far would you have to get back from trees?
How far do you need to be back from trees? Mine, I just left, as long as they don't shade your poles from the back, it doesn't matter. The Solar Pathfinder will tell you how far from the front it has to be, and you can make compromises if it's only going to shade at the certain hours of the day. I've started to say that I just left enough space so that I could mow behind my poles.
In front of it?
In front?
In the path, I mean, just 50 feet, 100 feet, 1,000 feet. Rough.
I don't know that. I'm sorry, I don't know that. I have a lot of space, so I didn't have to know that.
That distance depends on how tall your trees are. You can look at the angle of the sun. It's lowest in the winter. But typically, if you have 60, 70 foot high trees, you might be looking at 100 feet back or so. So it really depends on the height of the trees. All right. I didn't hear, Marilyn, I didn't hear the cost of the system if you got all the rebates, bottom line. Any idea?
It was $23,000 out of pocket. That's what I was saying. I equated to a kitchen remodel or a car.
Right.
Or a pool.
And then the
The
rebates,
rebate,
tax credits are probably what, 12 or 13?
The rebate for me was only 25%, so that's $7,700. Federal was estimated to be about the same, and state will be estimated to be about $5,000 because state has a cap.
Okay, so for people that didn't hear that, Marilyn told you what the out-of-pocket cost was, but there's also what, 7,000 in federal? Is that what you said?
About 7 in federal, 7 in the NYSERDA rebate.
Okay, so about $7,000 back in your federal taxes as a credit, $7,000 from NYSERDA back. These are rough numbers, and 5,000 from the state. So add that up. That's a sizable chunk of the out-of-pocket cost, and we're going to show some slides about how much the incentives in New York really knock the price of these down. You pay the out-of-pocket, but you get a lot of money back.
I should mention the NYSERDA rebate doesn't come from your out-of-pocket. That's
Right. Okay. All right. We'll get into more of that, but we'll have the next speaker up. Kevin.
My system's a little different from the other folks that you've seen so far. I didn't have a big lot to put my system on poles, so I had to fit mine on my house. And I have a few slides about the different ways that it could have fit on the house and how we ended up with the design that we ended up with. You can see here, I have, well, let me back here. There's two different gable roofs I have it on. They're mounted right on this 9-on-12 roof. It was a new constructed house, so I had the advantage of having the contractor come in and be able to run all the wires in the house before the walls were in, which was a plus. You can see a close-up, there's about a 4-inch gap between the panels and the shingles. The design of this system evolved over time, and it had to do with the orientation of my house in space, north, south, east, west, the orientation of the roofs, and where there was shade on my lot. And it had to do also with how many panels and how many panels would go with how many inverters. So the first one that they showed me, these are the pictures that I got from, was Renewable Power System at the time. It's now Altiris. They had software that showed the orientation of the house in space and where the panels would go, and they would give you estimates of the system efficiency. The first one they showed me was a 2 kilowatt system, a small one. It had 10% shade loss, essentially from the peak of the roof shading the panels in the morning. And what you see is overall system cost that they quoted me, and then about how much it would cost me out-of-pocket cost. So this is the first one they showed me. And you can see the orientation of my house relative to north. It's about 15 degrees off of north. Another one they showed me was a west-facing system. This is the original one was facing south. They said, well, we can face it west, but because my house roof is only 15 degrees off of north-south, there's a lot of inefficiency associated with the fact that you lose a lot of the morning sun. So I didn't like that either. And then they said, okay, well, how about we do both? And that didn't really thrill me very much either, but that was another choice. One of the disadvantages of this was that when you have 2 arrays that face in different directions, you have to have different inverters because they're generating different amount of voltage depending on what time of day it was. There's the price of that would have been, overall would have been 36, would have been 9,000 out of pocket. And then they looked at this one and see how they could fit on my roof. This is 2.1 kilowatts. There it's all on my garage roof. This is the one that we ended up with, where there's 10 panels on my garage roof.
We lost your video.
We got a video issue. We back?
Should be good.
All set? So this is where we ended up with, was 10 panels on the garage roof, 4 panels on the gable roof. It's my daughter's bedroom. The final system costs $28,700, total about $7,000 out of pocket when you take into account all the factors that Kevin was discussing a minute ago. The lesson learned from our system was looking at the orientation of the house. Unlike the pole-mounted system where it's free, you can set your panels however you want. Your house is the way your house is, so you got to take into account the orientation of the roof surfaces in your house to understand which system would give you the most efficiency. The fact that there was if you're going to have different facing systems in your house, you need separate inverters. That's an extra cost. You got to buy an extra inverter, so that's an extra cost you have to account for. Your vendors should be able to sit and do exactly what they did with me. Go through different options. There's different ratings of panels. There's different orientations on your house. Your vendor should be willing to quote you as many different systems as it takes for you to figure out what it is that you want to do and be able to work with you on that. And there's different panels available. Like, Larry, which ones do you have in your house?
230s.
You have the 230s. I have 230s in my house. Wayne, what do you have in your house?
210s.
You have 210s. What do you have in your panel?
185.
185. So depending on the maker and the which panel you buy, there's different price, different sizes, and different efficiencies. So you got to think about which efficiency, essentially per dollar, do you want to get. So there's different panels available. And essentially another lesson I learned was the bigger system for me was not necessarily better. I could have gone with a much larger system, more panels, more money, but it wouldn't have got me proportionally the same amount of power out of it. So that's the lesson I learned, when I did my project. Question?
You want to explain that the number we just threw out, the 230 or 210?
Yeah, well, that is
the number.
That is the watts per panel. So each one of the panels are about 2 by 3, Larry?
5 by 2.5.
Yeah, so it's 230 watts per panel. So you can add up, you look at the panels. I have 14 of them times 230, that's how many I have. Larry has 18 times 230. Wayne, how many?
20.
Yeah, it is 20 times 210, so that's your rated system efficiency. Question in the back?
Now, are you also able to sell power back to the utility?
Larry is more conservative with his power use than I am. My system use is a little more, I'm not going to get into why that is, but I generally do not even in the most optimum circumstances, I generally use a little more than I make.
But you could. These are.
I could, but that's on me. That's not as a result of the system. That's, my system makes what it makes. If I was able to follow people in my house around and turn the lights off, and perhaps keep the person whose thumb was on the thermostat for the air conditioner, perhaps I could do a little better job than I do right now. But I don't. Right now, with the lifestyle of the people I live with in my house, I do not exceed my usage with my system.
You need special shingles underneath the panels?
Absolutely not. No, what they do like to have a nice roof underneath them, and they do. There's a calculation when you do a roof-mounted system like this. They look at the design of your house to make sure the extra weight it can carry. Almost any modern house can take the weight. They look at roof load, at snow on it. For example, this winter, the month of February, I had 2 feet of snow sitting on top of these panels for like 3 weeks. Now, I have designed in my mind a system to clear them off, and that won't happen again this year. But this year, because you can see, especially the way the wind blew the snow up against that, where the gable of my garage met the main roof, it packed right in there, and it didn't melt off for a long time. But they look at snow load, wind load, because you're changing the surface. So they look at the various factors of the effect on the roof before they go ahead and build the system.
I have some design question. What's the cutoff year between the old one and the modern?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. What is the
Cutoff year between the modern versus the old one? Design years. You said modern housing.
Yeah. All I'll say is this: are you an engineer?
Yeah.
You understand how to calculate roof loads? You look at the design of the roof.
I
and you do it.
understand, but the codes changed. But I'm saying, what year the code changed?
I have no bloody idea what year the building codes changed in the state. No, seriously, it's a structure by structure assessment. You're going to have somebody get up. If you want a roof-mounted system, a good installer will get up in your attic space and look at your roof members and their orientation, spacing, and size, and say, is this load going to be borne by this system? I would not trust an installer who simply says, this house was built in the 1990s, so therefore it will take the load. I would move on to the next installer. I would want that guy in my attic to look at what I had to make sure that it could take the load. There was a question in the back. Oh, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Regarding your cost, the 7.1 or the 7,000, was that truly out of pocket, or was that after you got your federal?
That is my final. Well, I did my taxes, so yeah, I'm telling you that's what it cost me.
But what I'm asking is, when you gave a check to pay for this system, did you pay?
Oh no, I wrote it.
I
wrote a check for a little more than double that.
Okay, so the only benefit you get initially with that's out of that is automatic is NYSERDA, right?
Right, correct. What happens is you have your NYSERDA grant, which is kilowatt hour or wattage based.
Cost per watt.
It's cost per watt. So they do a calculation based on the wattage of the system. And NYSERDA gives your installer that money. You never see that many. So your bill is total system cost minus the NYSERDA grant. And then you turn around and you go to the state and federal government and you say, I have this wonderful system at my house. May I have my tax credits, please? And then at the end of the year, you get that money back.
How long are the tax credits supposed to last? Schedule for the
Federal now is till 2016.
So the question was how long are the tax credits going to last? And Kevin says they're currently scheduled to go through 2016. What about the state?
State is. I have a slide on it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but it's not infinite. There's a sunset for these. I just don't know what they are. They're not that hard to look up though, and the installers know them quite well. Way in the back.
How are you going to deal with the time to replace your shingles in like 20 years, 15 years? How do they get under the panels?
You just unbolt them from the roof. The way they're mounted, people who've done roofing know what I'm talking about. Everybody know what a roof jack is. It goes underneath the shingle. And you lean on it as you go up. They're essentially roof jacks that they're mounted on. And you would have to have your installer or a contractor come out, unbolt them, take the roof jacks out, replace your roofing surface, put them back on again.
Actually, these panels prolong the life of your shingles.
They should. You're a lot less UV load on it, but the issue there is you're going to have much of your roof surface would be degraded, and then you would have the part underneath which is not degraded. You'd probably replace it anyway. But you're right; it does take the sun and the load off.
Suppose you were putting a new roof on your house at the same time, roughly the same time you were installing roof-mounted solar panels. Would you still have to put shingles on under the solar panels?
Absolutely. Yeah, because the water is still going to hit above your panels. The wind could blow snow, ice, rain.
It's between the two.
Yeah, they're not watertight. It's not a roof, a sealed surface.
So they don't take the place of the physical shingles?
Nope. Your roof protects your house, and your PV system makes power. And Kevin is telling me that I am done, and I'm moving on.
You get enough.
Great, thanks, folks.
Great questions, everybody. I'll just follow up on a couple of on the roof one. Yeah, one of the things you want to do is think about whether you're getting close to a roof replacement, and maybe do that before you put the system on, or go to a ground mount, because that eliminates that problem. The other, what we'll talk about when we do our solar hot water, there's now panels that are roof integrated, and the shingles are flashed right up to the panel so that you can replace your roof without taking the panels off. But that's not PV, that's for this hot water. The other thing that Marilyn alluded to before we lose track of it is that these panels are more efficient the cooler they are. So in the winter, they actually make, in some cases, more power than they're rated for. If it's rated for 230 watts, you might see a few percent more than that. So you actually get more than they're rated for. Conversely, when they're on a roof, you have to have an air gap because they make less power if they get too hot. So that's why they leave a gap under the roof on these to get some airflow and keep the panels cool. And you don't have that problem with a ground-mounted system. All right, moving on. Keith? We're gonna. Yeah, we'll have
the
time
roof
for-
mounted has to have the same pitch as the roof, or they can
Nope.
be at different pitch?
No, it's a good question. Why don't we just, since he snuck that one in. Last minute question. The question was, do the panels have to be at the same angle as the roof? And no, they don't. They can be tilted. If you have a really shallow roof pitch, you can tilt the panels to get a more optimum production from your system.
But you can't adjust them once they're on the roof.
Okay. Yeah, you wouldn't be probably not adjusting them seasonally on the roof, except maybe with a flat roof. But typically, figure roof, you're not going to adjust the angle. It'll be set either, a lot of people put them parallel to their roof for aesthetics, and just take the really small efficiency hit, or you can optimize the angle. It's not often that you have the optimum angle. For year-round production, you pretty much match it to our latitude or slightly less. With a grid-tied system, slightly less, because you get more production in the nicer weather. And we have probably 9 months of really good, strong production here. So you optimize for that.
What's the pitch you recommend for this area?
It's around 34 to 36, but you could do, a lot of roofs are 45 or 42. You're really not losing that much by that small of an adjustment.
And I am Keith Gronwald. I'm with DER. I had moved out onto this piece of property almost 6 years ago. And if anyone has ever heard of the Dewey Local landfill, it's now an MPL site. Well, I not only work in hazardous waste, but I now live next to hazardous waste. This is Nassau Lake here, which was contaminated by the landfill. The house is right over here on a point. And if you notice, there's a large tree over here. There was a catalpa tree, a number of tall pine trees. When I moved out here, I had said, nice south-facing house, what a wonderful place to put a system, but I said I didn't really want to lose the trees. As you can see, there was a fair amount of shade that the roof would have, and I said, oh well, I'll stick with shade. Mother Nature disagreed. So this was the catalpa tree, and after that I said, well, I guess I'm going with a PV system. Now the roof, it's an unusual shape, and I had brought out 2 installers to have a look at it. I was interested in putting in a 5 kilowatt array. The first company, they came out and they said we can only put on 3. Second company had a few more ideas, and this is what we ended up with. Once again, the interior panels. This system went operational in February of 2008. The guys were actually out there. It seemed like they scheduled whenever a snowstorm was coming, that's when they were coming out. They shoveled off the roof several times, but had done an excellent job. I have produced over 17,000 kilowatts of energy since this has been installed. I figure that has supplied me about 73% of my power. And I actually, I have electric hot water, I have a hot tub out there, extra freezer in the basement, so it's a fair amount. Of course, one of the first things one does when one installs a system is you go around and you switch out all your old light bulbs, CFLs everywhere, and boy, I like them. Okay, we can see it was 17,000 kilowatts as of about a month ago. This was taken just about noon. I had produced 13